Yeah. No, that's cool, and that's really good advice. So, how'd you finance the business? Did you go out and raise VC,
Yeah, yeah.
friends, family? How'd you do that? Give us a little color there, because everybody listening to a podcast with an entrepreneur always
Yeah.
wants to go, how'd you get the money?
Yeah. So when we initially raised friends and family, right? That's how we set up the shop, and we kind of started essentially hiring
I
people,
talked
etc.
to a an entrepreneur yesterday,
Yeah.
and I added another F: friends, family, and fools. It's always
Yeah. But we have a my co-founder. He actually, this is his second startup, right? So his first startup was pretty successful, and there were friends and family who invested in that, and so he showed how it could be positive, it could be beneficial, and of course we have reputation within our circles that people were willing to trust us, right? So first was friends and family, which was a small round, which was a safe round, and after
what's
that.
a safe?
So safe is like you don't actually put a valuation on the company, because when you are so young and you're collecting, or you're essentially getting the money from friends and family who are not necessarily institutional investors, right? They don't know how to value the company. They're basically trusting the founders. So what we do is we make it as a safe round. What that means is um, there's a bottom line. There's a like an catch, like there's a net where if the valuation goes down, it can't really go down below a certain limit, but there is upside. If someone comes in tomorrow and puts a value on the company, and the valuation is even higher, they still get at the net. So essentially, what it means is there is a protection for the bottom side, right? For on the downside, but there is benefit on the upside, right? So it makes it
Yeah.
simpler. And when you go to a VC, when you get the money and they put a valuation, the safe actually shares would convert at that valuation. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, no, that's actually the reason I asked is we've raised some money I think we've raised $4.5 million
Yeah.
today at Digital Wildcatters. And I want to say the first 2 million of that was a safe.
Yeah.
And it's basically, hey, if the company blows up, you get the money back first. It's
Exactly. Yeah.
kind of like
Yeah.
a note in that. But at the end of the day, we'll discuss valuation when we have a pricing round.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
exactly
So
that.
you
Yeah.
did that, but then you raised institutional capital later.
Yep, we did. And we raised it in the middle of COVID, because we didn't know how long it was going to happen so we raised it in the middle of COVID, about May, June of 2020. That was the first, I would say, pre-seed, right? And then after that, we raised another round last year, end of 2022. And that was our seed round, right? And now we're basically in the process of closing for Series A.
Nice.
Yeah.
So give me as many as you want, but at least one or two bits of advice for a CEO who's out trying to do what you just did.
Yeah. So one of the things that is important to understand is, fundraising it takes time, right? Dedicated time. And the best way to do it is to be prepared, right? And by preparation, I mean you're trying to convince someone that this is a business that's going to grow to 100 million over 5 years, 6 years, whatever it is, right? And the other person doesn't really understand exactly what you're doing, right? I mean, they may have general idea. So they're going to ask for clarifications, material, information, right? And you as a founder have to provide that, that kind of information and knowledge, and convince them. So that requires some collateral, some material, right? Whether it's about competition, whether it's about your own company, whether it's about revenues, whatever it might be, right? So the first thing I would suggest is make sure that you have all that collateral prepared. Number one. Second, not every VC is going to invest in every type of business. Second, like, you're on the energy space, find institutional investors who have a focus in the energy space. Find investors who focus on the specific market that you're targeting, right? And then you create a list of all the VCs who you think are good, for the business that you're building. Third, I would say, then make sure either you have contacts or, how can you reach out to the VCs, right? So that you have a warm connection instead of, throwing in just a random email. I'm not saying, don't throw a random email, but, you have a better chance of getting your time with the VC when you have a warm connection. So those, I would say, are, if you do that well, then you're basically going to be very efficient in that process. Because one of the challenges for a founder when they're raising the money is you lose a lot of time focusing on raising the money instead of building the business, right? And that's huge. I mean, and so
I think that's been Colin's big realization about fundraising. He's just, holy crap, it takes a lot of time.
Yeah,
it's a full-time job.
Exactly. Yeah.
One other thing I'll say about fundraising that I try to tell entrepreneurs, and you tell me whether this is good advice or crappy advice, but one of the things I see too often is a founder is trying to, and I hate to be, pardon my French here, but they try to get laid on the first date. And I keep saying, no, this is like dating.
Yeah.
You want the next date.
Right.
So you can sit there and have a fight about some arcane detail.
Yeah.
And try to prove the VC you're correct. That's great. You may have won the battle, but you lost the war because that person's going to be next.
Yep.
It's you're trying to educate enough so they'll invest more time because ultimately at the end of the day they're gonna have to spend a lot of time with you to cut a check.
Right.
You just want them to spend more time with you.
Right. I completely agree. I think it's like a sale, right? I mean you can't just convince someone about something that you've built over, years and years of knowledge or, your understanding of the market. And you can't impart all of that knowledge in a single call. It's very difficult, right? And you have to be patient and you have to explain why this is the best thing that you're doing and how this is going to create an impact, both from a revenue perspective as well as from a society perspective. And I think it's important. I completely agree with what you said.
Yeah. So tell me who, of all the vast majority of the world that listens to this podcast, but of folks listening to the podcast, who do you want picking up the phone and calling you or emailing you? Who's kind of, if your customer is everyone in the world, how do you narrow that down?
Yeah. What I would say is any manufacturing operations, right? People, companies who have manufacturing operations, especially in the heavy asset space, and more specifically in the process industries, right? So for those folks, if you're looking to improve your operational excellence, right? You either you've stagnated, either you are trying various types of solutions, they are not giving you the results, it's taking too long for you, your operations teams are not accepting, you can't find the ROI because your management doesn't see the return after 2 years. Those are the folks, call us, we will show how we can deploy in a matter of weeks. In every customer where we have deployed, we have a record of 100% success with scaling up almost within a year. And so we will show how we do it. And at the end of the day, I mean, we want to also help the industry, right? Kind of see what is available in the market. And we always tell them, at the end of the day, if it fits their needs and if it fits their, business objectives, we're happy to work together and see. Yeah.
So what's kind of a ballpark that the software may cost?
Yeah.
I mean, if you told me $100 million, that wouldn't surprise me. If you told me $75,000, that would surprise me as cheap. But ballpark, what do these solutions look like?
Yeah. So what I would say is it Certainly it will depend on, how big the plant is, what are we covering, right? But typically most of our clients, anywhere between, let's say 150,000 to 300,000 is essentially where they would typically start, right? And go from there, right? But it always depends on, the size of the operation.